The ship was cold and dark, and it smelled like metal and fear. Lily Parker sat in the corner of a cage made of thick black bars, and she held a torn photograph close to her chest. The photograph showed her father smiling in his security uniform, and she looked at it every few minutes to remind herself that he was real, that he would come for her. She was 12 years old and 3 weeks ago. Her life had been normal. She had lived on Europa Station with her mother and father. Her father, Marcus, worked as the security chief, and her mother, Elena, taught children at the station school. They had a small home with a window that looked out at the stars. Every night, Lily would sit at that window and dream about exploring the galaxy. Then the raiders came. They came without warning in ships that looked like giant metal insects. The alarms screamed through the station, and people ran in every direction. Lily remembered her mother grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the emergency shelter. They almost made it. The Valari were reptile creatures with green scales and yellow eyes. They stood taller than humans, and they moved fast. Their claws could cut through metal, and their teeth were sharp like knives. The galaxy knew them as slavers and criminals. They took people from weak worlds and sold them to the highest bidder. Lily remembered the moment they caught her and her mother. 2 Valari soldiers blocked the hallway, and her mother pushed Lily behind her. "Run, baby," her mother said. But there was nowhere to run. Her mother fought. She was just a teacher, but she fought like a warrior. She hit one of the Valari with a metal pipe, and for a moment, Lily thought they might escape. Then the second Valari raised his weapon, and everything changed. Lily did not remember much after that. She remembered screaming. She remembered being carried. She remembered waking up in this cage on this cold, dark ship. That was 3 weeks ago now. Lily sat in the corner and watched the other prisoners. There were about 50 of them in the cargo hold. Some were human like her, but most were aliens from other worlds. There was an old woman with 4 eyes and gray fur sitting in the cage next to hers. The woman had told Lily her name was Nira, and that she was from a world called Fenwraith. Valari took my grandchildren, Nira said on the first day. They are somewhere on this ship, but I cannot find them. Lily had nodded but said nothing. She did not trust her voice to speak without crying. The days passed slowly. The Valari guards came twice a day to give them food and water. The food was gray paste that tasted like nothing, and the water was warm and stale. But Lily ate everything because her father had taught her that survival meant keeping your strength. On the 5th day, a Valari commander came to look at the prisoners. He was bigger than the others, and he wore a red uniform that showed his rank. His scales were darker, almost black, and his eyes were cold, like a snake watching its prey. He walked slowly past the cages and stopped in front of Lily. "This one," he said, pointing at her. His voice was rough and hissing like air escaping from a broken pipe. A guard came forward and opened the cage door. Lily backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The guard grabbed her arm and pulled her out. The commander studied her face. He tilted his head like a curious animal. "You are not crying," he said. "Most humans cry." Lily said nothing. He leaned closer, and Lily could smell his breath. It was rotten, like dead things. "Your mother, she fought us. She killed one of my soldiers before we stopped her." He paused, watching for a reaction. "I thought you would be broken by now." Lily looked at him straight in the eyes. Her heart was pounding, but she did not look away. "My father is coming for me," she said. Her voice was small but steady. The commander stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Your father," he said, still laughing. "We are 2,000 light years from your little station. We have already jumped through 6 different systems. Your father does not even know which direction we went." He gestured around at the ship. "Even if he did, what could one human do against the Valari syndicate? We have warships. We have armies. We have controlled these trade routes for 1,000 years. He leaned even closer until his face was inches from hers. "No, one is coming for you, little human. The sooner you accept that, the easier your life will be." He pushed her back into the cage, and the guard locked the door. Lee sat down in her corner and watched the commander walk away. When he was gone, she looked at the photograph of her father again. She remembered the last morning before the attack. Her father had been putting on his uniform, and she had asked him what he would do if bad people ever came to the station. He had knelt down and looked at her with serious eyes. "If anything ever happens," he said, "you hold on. You survive. You do whatever it takes to stay alive, because I will find you." He had held her face in his hands. "Do you understand me, Lily? I will always find you." She understood 2,000 light years away. Marcus Parker stood in what used to be his home. Everything was burned. The walls were black with fire damage, and the ceiling had collapsed in several places. Emergency crews were still putting out small fires, and medical teams were carrying away the wounded and the dead. Marcus stood in the middle of his living room, and he did not move. He was holding his wife. Her body was cold and still, and her eyes were closed like she was sleeping. But she was not sleeping, and Marcus knew she would never wake up. He had found her in the hallway near the emergency shelter. She had been trying to protect their daughter for a long time. He just held her and said nothing. The emergency workers moved around him, but no one tried to make him leave. They could see the look in his eyes, and they knew better. Finally, his second-in-command approached. Tommy Blake was a young man with short brown hair and a scar on his chin. He had served under Marcus for 5 years, and he had never seen his commander like this. "Sir," he said carefully, "we tracked the raider ship. They were Valari Syndicate operating out of the Outer Rim. We got their jump signature before they left the system." Marcus did not respond. He was still looking at his wife. Tommy continued, "We know they're heading. They are moving toward the auction worlds. It is a 3-week journey if they take the standard route slowly." Marcus lifted his head. His eyes were red, but there were no tears. His face was empty like a mask. "My daughter," he said. His voice was quiet. Tommy nodded. "The manifest shows they took 37 humans, including children." "Sir, I am sorry, but the chances of get me a ship, sir. We cannot authorize a rescue mission. The Valari Syndicate controls half the Outer Rim. They have connections with 3 major galactic powers. If we send military vessels, it could start a war." Marcus gently laid his wife down on the floor. He kissed her forehead and closed her eyes. Then he stood up. "I did not ask for a military vessel," he said. "I asked for a ship." Tommy stared at him. "Sir, you cannot be serious. One ship against the entire Syndicate." Marcus walked past him toward the door. "I have a ship, the Wanderer. It is old, but it will fly." Tommy followed him. "That patrol vessel. You bought it for retirement trips. It is not combat ready. Then I will make it ready, sir." "This is suicide." Marcus stopped at the door. He turned and looked at Tommy, and for a moment the younger man saw something in his commander's eyes, something cold and dark and very, very dangerous. "They took my daughter," Marcus said. "They killed my wife." He paused. "I am going to get Lily back, and I am going to make them pay for what they did. Every single one of them." He walked out into the burned corridor. Tommy watched him go. Then he pulled out his communicator. "Danny," he said into the device. "It is Tommy. Listen. The commander is about to do something crazy, and I think he's going to need backup on the other end of the line." A rough voice answered, "What kind of crazy?" "The kind where he goes after the Valari Syndicate alone." There was a long pause. Then the voice said, "Send me the coordinates. I am on my way." Ami smiled sadly. "That is what I thought you would say." The Wanderer was not much to look at. It was an old patrol vessel that Marcus had bought 5 years ago from a military surplus auction. The paint was faded, and there were dents in the hull from decades of service. The engines made strange noises when they started, and the navigation computer was so old it still used physical buttons instead of touchscreens. But Marcus had spent years working on this ship. He had replaced the power core with a military-grade unit. He had upgraded the weapons systems with parts he had collected from his tours of duty. He had reinforced the hull with armor plating that could stop most standard weapons. The Wanderer was ugly and old, but it was also dangerous. Marcus stood in the cargo bay loading weapons onto a table, rifles and pistols and grenades and knives. He had collected these over 20 years of service, and he had never thought he would use them again. Now he checked each one carefully, making sure they were ready. The airlock opened and Danny Reeves walked in. Danny was a big man with broad shoulders and a thick beard. His arms were covered with scars from old battles, and his eyes had the same tired look that all veterans carried. He had served with Marcus in 3 different wars, and he had saved Marcus' life at least twice. Marcus did not look up from his weapons. "You should not be here." Danny walked over to the table and picked up a rifle. He checked the power cell and nodded with approval. "Nice upgrades, I mean it." Marcus said, "This is my fight. You have a life now, a wife, kids." Danny set down the rifle and looked at his old friend. "You remember Titan Station?" Marcus stopped what he was doing. Danny continued, "Those rebels had us pinned down for 6 hours. I took a shot to the leg and could not move. You carried me 2 miles through enemy territory with bullets flying everywhere." He paused. "I asked you why you did it, and you said, because that is what we do." Marcus finally looked up. Danny smiled. "So here I am, because that is what we do." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Marcus nodded once. "Thank you." Danny picked up the rifle again. "So what is the plan?" Marcus pulled up a holographic map of the galaxy. "The Valari ship is called the Crimson Mercy. It is heading for the fun auction worlds here." He pointed to a cluster of planets on the far side of the map. "Standard route takes 3 weeks, but they have a 6-day head start. It is a lot of ground to cover." Marcus zoomed in on the map. "There is a trading hub called Nexus Prime. It is on their route. They will need to stop there for fuel and supplies. I have a contact who can tell us if they pass through." Danny studied the map. Nexus Prime is lawless territory. No government, no rules. That is why the Valari use it. Your contact." Marcus grabbed a jacket and headed for the cockpit. "Her name is Rosa. She is an information broker." Danny followed him. "Can we trust her?" Marcus sat in the pilot seat and started the engines. "Rosa lost her family to slavers 10 years ago. She hates the Valari more than anyone I know." The Wanderer lifted off from Europa Station and headed for open space. Marcus entered the jump coordinates, and the ship shuddered as the hyperdrive powered up. "In 12 hours we will be at Nexus Prime," Marcus said. "Get some rest." Danny sat in the co-pilot seat. "I will rest when your daughter is safe." The ship jumped to hyperspace, and the stars turned into long streaks of light. Nexus Prime was exactly as ugly as Danny remembered. The station hung in space like a giant metal tumor. It was built from hundreds of different ships and structures, all welded together over centuries. Every criminal organization in the sector had a presence here, and the only law was the law of money. Marcus docked the Wanderer in a private bay and paid the docking master triple the normal fee to forget he had ever seen them. Then they walked into the station. The corridors were crowded with aliens of every species. Marcus saw Valari soldiers drinking at a bar, and his hand moved toward his weapon. "Not yet," Danny said quietly. "We need information first." Marcus forced himself to relax. They kept walking. The bar was called The Void's Edge, and it was the kind of place where people went to disappear. The lights were dim and the music was loud, and nobody looked at anyone else for too long. Marcus found a table in the corner and waited 10 minutes later. A woman sat down across from him. Rosa Martinez was in her 40s with dark hair and tired eyes. She had been beautiful once, but years of living in places like this had worn her down. She looked at Marcus and shook her head. "I heard about Europa Station," she said. "I'm sorry about Elena." Marcus said nothing. Rosa sighed. "The Crimson Mercy passed through here 6 hours ago. They refueled and bought supplies, then headed out." She slid a data chip across the table. "This has their heading and crew manifest. 200 Valari soldiers and about 500 slaves." 500, Marcus said. Rosa nodded. "Humans and others. They are taking them to the auction worlds. Big sale coming up. Buyers from all over the galaxy." She paused. "Marcus, your daughter, she is just one girl. They have armies. Then I will go through their armies." Rosa studied his face. She had known Marcus for years, and she had seen him angry before, but this was different. This was cold and quiet, and it scared her. "There's a faster route," she said finally. She pulled out a napkin and wrote coordinates on it, through Valari space. "It cuts a week off the journey, but it is heavily patrolled. You would have to be crazy to try it." Marcus took the napkin. "How heavily patrolled?" "6 patrol ships at least. Maybe more. They shoot first and ask questions never." Danny leaned forward. "We can handle 6 ships." Rosa looked at him like he was insane. "You two against 6 warships." Danny shrugged. "We have done worse odds." Rosa turned back to Marcus. "You really think you can do this?" "1 ship against the Syndicate." Marcus stood up and put the napkin in his pocket. "I am not going to fight the Syndicate. I'm going to get my daughter. Then anyone who tries to stop me is going to regret." I've walked toward the door, and Danny followed. Rosa watched them go and whispered to herself, "God help anyone who gets in that man's way." Wanderer jumped into Valari space. 4 hours later, Marcus sat at the controls, watching the sensor display. The patrol ships would find them soon, and when they did, things would get violent. He had run the numbers in his head. A standard Valari patrol ship had a crew of 50 and enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But Valari ships were built for intimidation, not speed. They were slow, and their targeting systems were designed for large targets like freighters and cargo ships. They had never faced anything like the Wanderer or anyone like Marcus Parker. The first patrol ship appeared on sensors 20 minutes later. It was called the Hunter's Pride, and it was already moving to intercept. Danny checked his weapons console. "Weapons are hot." Marcus adjusted their course slightly. "Not yet. Let them get close." The patrol ship opened a communication channel. "Unidentified vessel," a Valari voice said. "Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Failure to comply will result in your destruction." Marcus did not respond. He kept flying. The Valari ship fired a warning shot. It passed in front of the Wanderer, close enough to make the hull shake. "Last warning," the voice said. "Surrender now." Marcus smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Danny," he said. Now the Wanderer spun like a dancer and accelerated toward the patrol ship. The Valari gunners fired, but Marcus was already moving. The shots passed through empty space where the Wanderer had been a moment before. Danny opened fire. The first shot hit the patrol ship's weapon array, and it exploded in a shower of sparks. The second shot hit their engines. The third hit their communications. In less than 2 minutes, the Hunter's Pride was dead in space. Its crew was alive, but they could not move, and they could not call for help. Marcus did not slow down. He flew past the crippled ship and headed deeper into Valari territory. Behind him, the patrol ship captain stared at his burning console in disbelief. What was that? He whispered. His sensor officer was shaking. "Sir, his reaction times, they are impossible. No species can process information that fast." The captain looked at the designation on the human ship. "Earth Registry civilian vessel. What are humans?" he asked. The sensor officer did not have an answer, but across Valari space the word was already spreading. A human ship was coming, and it was destroying everything in its path. Commander Voss had a problem, and her name was Lily Parker. He stood outside her cell watching her through the bars. She sat in the corner like she always did, holding that torn photograph and staring at nothing. 2 weeks they had been traveling, and she had not broken. Not once. Most humans broke within days. The isolation and the fear and the hunger usually did the job. The strong ones lasted maybe a week before they started crying and begging. But this girl just sat there waiting. Voss had tried everything. First, he tried starvation. He cut her food rations in half, hoping hunger would weaken her spirit. But she just ate whatever they gave her and said nothing. Then he tried isolation. He moved her to a cell away from the other prisoners where she could not see or talk to anyone. But she just sat in the dark and waited. Then he tried threats. He told her in detail what would happen at the auction worlds, how buyers would examine her like an animal, how she would be sold to the highest bidder, how she would never see Earth again. But she just looked at him with those steady eyes, and said the same thing every time. "My father is coming." It was driving him crazy. His lieutenant stood beside him watching the girl. "What do you want to do with?" Hervas did not answer right away. He pulled out his datapad and opened a file. Marcus Parker, Security Chief, Europa Station, former Marine Earth. Military. Looked at the file. "So her father is a soldier. Many humans are soldiers. They are weak, Voss." Scrolled through the file, reading the details. 3 tours in the Frontier Wars. Decorated for bravery under fire. Survived the Titan Station massacre. Single-handedly held a position against 50 rebels for 6 hours. Shifted uncomfortably. That is impressive for a human. But he is still just one man. "We have 200 soldiers on this ship." Voss kept reading. "Classified operations in the outer colonies. Specialized training." And he stopped. "What is it?" Voss closed the file and looked at Lily. Through the bars, she was still sitting in the corner, not paying attention to them. But something in her eyes made him uneasy. "Double the guards," he said. "Commander, you heard me. Double the guards and change our course. We are taking the long route too." The auction world. Looked confused. "That will add 5 days to our journey. I do not care." Do it. Voss walked away, and Crix followed, still asking questions. But Voss was not listening. He was thinking about what he had read in that file, and he was wondering if maybe, just maybe, he should have left Europa Station alone inside her cell. Lily watched them go. She had been listening to everything. They thought she could not hear through the thick walls, but the ventilation system carried sound, and she had learned to listen carefully. Her father had taught her that intelligence wins battles. He always said, "Pay attention and you will always have an advantage." She waited until the guards changed shifts. Then she pulled out a small piece of metal she had hidden in her sleeve. It was a piece from her cot, a thin strip that had come loose on the first day. She had kept it hidden, waiting for the right moment. Now she used it to work on the ventilation grate above her head. The screws were old and rusted. It took her an hour to get them loose, but finally the grate came free. She pulled herself up into the duct and started crawling. She did not try to escape. There was nowhere to go on a ship in deep space, even if she could reach an escape pod. She did not know how to fly it, and they would catch her before she got far. Instead, she moved through the ducts slowly and quietly, memorizing everything. She counted the guards. There were 42 on active duty at any time. She noted their patrol routes. They changed positions every 4 hours. She found the engine room and the bridge and the armory. She memorized the codes. She saw guards entering on door panels. She found where they kept the other prisoners. The cargo hold was divided into sections, and different species were kept apart. She saw humans in one section and Fenrins in another, and dozens of other aliens she did not recognize. She also found the section where they kept the children. There were about 30 of them, ranging from very young to teenagers. They were in smaller cages, and they looked scared and thin. A few were crying quietly. Others just stared at nothing. Lily wanted to help them. She wanted to open the cages and lead them all to safety. But she was just a girl, and she did not have a plan yet. So she watched and memorized, and then she crawled back to her cell when the morning shift came. She was sitting in her corner. Like always, the guard who brought her food looked at her suspiciously. "You were quiet last night." Lily shrugged. "I was sleeping." The guard grunted and pushed a tray of gray paste through the slot in the bars. "Eat." Lily ate. She needed her strength. Later that day, Nira, the old Fenran woman, managed to get moved to the cell next to Lily. The guards did not think it mattered where they put the prisoners, so they did not pay attention. Nira pressed her face against the bars and whispered, "You were gone last night." Lily looked at her. "I do not know what you mean." Nira smiled, showing teeth that were warm with age. "I have 4 eyes, child. I see things others miss. I saw you come back through the vent." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I was scouting." Nira nodded. "I thought so. You are not just waiting, you are preparing." Lily looked at the photograph of her father. "My dad is coming. I want to be ready when he does." "How?" Do you know he's coming? Lily remembered her father's face when he made her the promise. His eyes had been serious and strong, and she had never seen him break a promise. Not once, because he told me, she said. He told me he would always find me, and my father does not. Lynera studied the young human for a long moment. In her long life she had seen many things. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had seen heroes and cowards and everything in between. But she had never seen anything quite like this, a child with the courage of a warrior and the patience of a hunter. What is your father's name? Nera asked Marcus. Lily said. Marcus Parker. Nera repeated the name softly, then nodded. Well, Marcus Parker, she said. I hope you are as strong as your daughter believes, because she is counting on you on the bridge, Commander. Voss received a message that made his blood run cold. Commander, a communications officer said, we are receiving reports from the patrol ships in Sector 7, and they are all disabled. A single human vessel came through and destroyed their weapons and engines. He paused. The ship is heading this way. Voss gripped the arms of his command chair. How many? Patrol ship 6. So far 6 ships disabled by one vessel. The officer nodded. Sir, the reports say the human pilot, his reaction times are unlike anything we have seen. He moves before our gunners can even aim. Voss thought about the file he had read about Marcus Parker. He thought about the classified operations and the specialized training. He thought about the girl in the cargo hold who refused to break. How far away is this ship at? Current speed. He will reach us in approximately 40 hours. Voss made a decision. Send a message to Admiral Krex at the auction worlds. Tell him we need backup warships. At least 12 of them. Paul Serva stood up and looked out the viewport at the stars. We are not taking any chances, but even as he gave the order, a small voice in his head wondered if 12 ships would be enough. Down in her cell, Lily felt something change. She could not explain it, but the air felt different. The guards seemed nervous, walking faster and checking their weapons more often. Something was happening. She held her father's photograph close and smiled. He was coming. She could feel it. The word spread through Velari space like fire through dry grass. A human is coming. At first no one believed it. Humans were weak. Humans were soft. Humans were prey, not predators. The Velari had been taking humans from their little colonies for decades, and no one had ever come after them. Not once. But then the reports kept coming. Patrol ship after patrol ship went dark. Their weapons destroyed. Their engines crippled. Their crews left alive but helpless, floating in the void. And always the same description. A small ugly ship with earth markings, piloted by a man who moved like he could see the future. The commanders who received these reports started checking their escape pods. Some tried to run. They abandoned their patrol routes and fled to safer sectors. But the human ship did not follow them. It just kept going straight as an arrow, heading for one destination. The Crimson Mercy. Marcus Parker had not slept in 3 days. He sat in the pilot's seat of the Wanderer, his eyes fixed on the sensor display. The ship hummed around him, engines pushed beyond every safety limit. The hull was scorched from a dozen close calls, and the weapon systems were running hot. Danny came up from the cargo bay with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Marcus. You need to rest, Danny said. Marcus took the coffee but did not drink it. I will rest when she is safe. Danny sat in the co-pilot's seat and looked at the sensor data. 12 warships. That is what our intel says. 12 Velari warships waiting for us at the Crimson Mercy. Marcus nodded. Danny continued. Each warship has a crew of 300. That's 3,600 soldiers, not counting the 200 on the slave ship. He paused. You know, I have followed you into some crazy situations, but this might be the craziest. Marcus finally looked at him. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, and his face was covered with stubble. But there was something else in his expression, something cold and focused and terrifying. They killed Elena, he said. They took my daughter. They're gonna sell her like property. He turned back to the controls. So yes, Danny, this is crazy. But I'm going to do it anyway. Danny was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. Well, he said, finishing his coffee, I always wanted to see what 12 warships look like when they are on fire. Marcus almost laughed. Wanderer dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Crimson Mercy's sensor range. Marcus studied the display. The 12 warships were arranged in a perfect formation around the slave ship. Their weapons were powered up and their shields were at maximum. They were expecting him. That is a lot of firepower, Danny said. Marcus did not respond. He was calculating angles and distances in his head. He was remembering every battle he had ever fought, every enemy he had ever faced. He was thinking about Lily sitting in a cage waiting for him. He entered a series of commands into the navigation computer. Danny watched over his shoulder. What are you doing, Marcus? Finish typing. Trust me. The Wanderer accelerated toward the enemy formation on the bridge of the lead warship. Admiral Krex watched the human vessel approach. He was old for a Valari, with dark scales and scars from 100 battles. He had commanded fleets that conquered entire star systems. He had never lost one ship. He said to his officers, one human ship against 12 of my finest warships. This will be over in seconds. His tactical officer spoke up. Sir, the human vessel is accelerating. Should we intercept? Krex waved a clawed hand dismissively. Let him come. I want him close when we destroy him. I want him to see how hopeless his situation is. The warships held their formation, waiting. The Wanderer kept coming when it reached weapons range. Krex smiled. All ships open. Fired. 12 warships fired at once. The void lit up with energy beams and missiles and plasma bursts. Enough firepower to crack a moon. The Wanderer was not there. Marcus had changed course a split second before they fired. The ship spun and dove, and the enemy shots passed through empty space. The warships tried to track him, but he was already moving again, changing direction faster than their targeting computers could follow. What is happening? Krex demanded. His tactical officer was staring at the display in disbelief. Sir, his maneuvers, they are impossible. No ship should be able to move like that. Marcus flew the Wanderer through the enemy formation like a dancer moving through a crowd. He wove between warships so close that their own shots hit each other. 2 Valari ships fired at him and hit their own allies instead. Danny was firing constantly. Every shot found its mark. He did not aim to destroy. He aimed to cripple engines, weapons, communications. One by one, the warships went dark. This is not possible, Krex shouted. He is one ship, one human, but the evidence was right in front of him. 3 of his warships were already disabled. 2 more were trying to retreat. The formation was falling apart. The Wanderer Marcus felt everything. Slow down. This was what he had trained for. This was what 20 years of combat had prepared him for. In moments like this, the world became simple. There was only the mission, only the target, only the enemy in front of him and the daughter waiting behind them. He flew the ship with instincts that went beyond thought. His hands moved before his mind could give commands. His eyes tracked a dozen threats at once. He found gaps in the enemy fire that should not have existed and flew through them. Danny shouted something about shields, but Marcus did not hear. He was already firing, spinning, accelerating. Another warship went dark. Then another. Admiral Krex watched his fleet crumble, and for the first time in his long life, he felt something he had never felt before: fear. On the Crimson Mercy, Commander Voss received the reports with growing horror. 6 warships disabled. The formation is breaking. Admiral Krex is retreating. Voss stared at the display. The human vessel was still coming, damaged and smoking. But coming, its weapons were still firing. Its engines were still burning. How is this possible? Voss whispered. How is one human doing this? Krex was beside him, shaking. We should surrender, Commander. We should. Voss grabbed him. Never. We are Valari. We do not surrender the prey. But Commander Voss pushed him away. Prepare the crew for boarding action. If he wants his daughter, he will have to come through every soldier on this ship. But even as he gave the order, Voss knew the truth. The human was not going to stop. Nothing was going to stop him. The last warship fell silent, and the Wanderer turned toward the Crimson Mercy. Danny checked the damage report. Shields are gone. Hull breaches on 3 decks. Weapons at 30%. He looked at Marcus. We are in bad shape. Marcus guided the ship toward the slave vessel. Good thing we are not leaving. He found an airlock on the Crimson Mercy's lower hull and matched velocity. The two ships connected with a grinding crunch of metal. Marcus stood up from the pilot's seat and walked to the weapons rack. He picked up a rifle and checked the power cell. He strapped on armor and loaded extra ammunition. He put knives in his boots and grenades on his belt. Danny did the same. 200 soldiers on that ship. He said. Marcus loaded a pistol and holstered it at his side. Then I better not miss. He hit the airlock control, and the door opened. The Dimitrodouros. First Velari guards were waiting on the other side. They raised their weapons. Marcus shot them before they could fire. Then he stepped onto the slave ship and started walking. The hunt was over. The reckoning had begun. The corridors of the Crimson Mercy ran red. Marcus moved through the ship like a force of nature. His rifle barked once, twice, 3 times, and Velari's soldiers fell before they could react. He did not hesitate. He did not slow down. He walked forward. Always forward, and everything in his path died. Danny followed behind, covering their backs and freeing prisoners as they went. They found humans in cages crying with relief when they saw friendly faces. They found aliens from a dozen worlds who did not understand what was happening but knew enough to follow. Contact left. Danny called out. Marcus spun and fired. 2 guards dropped. More contacts behind us. Marcus reloaded without looking. Keep moving. I will handle them. They pushed deeper into the ship. On the bridge, Commander Voss watched the security feeds and felt his world falling apart. His soldiers were the best in the syndicate-trained killers who had conquered worlds, but they were falling like insects before this human, this one man who walked through their fire like it was rain. How? Voss said to no one. How is this possible? Ekrix was hiding behind a console. They are in the lower decks, moving toward the cargo hold. Voss pulled up a map of the ship. The cargo hold? That is where we keep the slaves. The human is looking for his daughter. Voss thought for a moment. Then he made a decision. Send everyone. We throw everything we have at him. He cannot survive forever, sir. We've already sent half our forces. Then send the other half. Voss shouted. I do not care if we lose every soldier on this ship. That human does not reach the cargo hold in the lower corridors. Marcus felt the resistance increase. Guards came from every direction now. Dozens of them, firing from doorways and corners and ventilation shafts. The air was thick with smoke, and the walls were scorched with blast marks. Danny took a hit to the shoulder and went down. Marcus grabbed him and pulled him into cover. How bad? Danny checked the wound through and through. I will live. Marcus gave him a medical patch. Then stay here. Free the prisoners I saw behind us. Danny grabbed his arm. Marcus, there are too many. You cannot fight through alone. Marcus looked at him. His eyes were calm and steady, and absolutely certain. Yes, I can. He stood up and walked into the fire. What happened next would be remembered in whispered stories across the galaxy for centuries. The human walked through bullets like they could not touch him. He moved between shots like he knew where they would be before they were fired. He killed with rifle and pistol and knife and bare hands. He did not shout. He did not scream. He just walked forward, and everything in front of him fell. Guards who had fought in 100 battles dropped their weapons and ran. Soldiers who had never feared anything in their lives looked into his eyes and saw their death. Veterans who had conquered star systems trembled like children. This was not a man. They were certain. This was a demon, a devil, a nightmare made flesh, and he was looking for his daughter in the cargo hold. Lily heard the gunfire getting close. The guards around her cage were nervous. They kept looking at each other and checking their weapons. Some of them had already run away. Others stood their ground, but their hands were shaking. Nira pressed against the bars of her cage. Can you hear that child? Lily nodded. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. He Is coming nearer, said wonder in her voice. He's really coming. The gunfire stopped for a long moment. There was silence. Then the cargo hold door exploded and where figure stood in the smoke and flames. He was covered in alien blood, and his armor was scorched and torn. His rifle was empty, so he dropped it and drew a pistol. His eyes scanned the room. The remaining guards opened fire. The man moved like water. He twisted and dodged, and the shots passed through empty air. His pistol barked 3 times, and 3 guards fell. The last guard dropped his weapon and fell to his knees, begging. The man walked past him. Without even looking, he reached the cages. Lily, he said. His voice was ragged and rough, and it was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. Dad Marcus found the control panel and hit the release. The cage door swung open. Lily ran out and threw herself into his arms. He fell to his knees, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. Tears streamed down his face, cutting tracks through the blood and dirt. I found you, he whispered. I found you. I found you. She buried her face in his chest and cried, Daddy. They stayed like that for a long moment. Father and daughter reunited after weeks of darkness and fear. The other prisoners watched in silence. Some were crying. Some were smiling. All of them understood they were seeing something sacred. Finally, Danny limped into the cargo hold. He was supported by 2 free prisoners, and his face was pale from blood loss. We need to go, he said. The ship is stable, but I do not know for how long. Marcus stood up, still holding Lily. Free everyone. All of them. Danny nodded. Already on it. They freed every prisoner on the ship. 512 souls who had been destined for slavery. They led them to the escape pods and the shuttle base. They gave them coordinates for safe harbor. When the last prisoner was away, Marcus went to the bridge. Commander Voss was still there, alone. All his crew had fled or surrendered. He stood by the viewport, looking out at the stars. The human approached, and Voss turned to face him. Remarkable, Voss said. His voice was calm, like he had accepted his fate. I have commanded ships for 50 years. I have never seen anything like you. Marcus said nothing. Voss tilted his head. You know what confuses me the most? It is not your skill or your luck or your impossible reflexes. It is your certainty. He paused. You knew you would win. From the moment you left your station, you knew, I knew. I would get my daughter back, even against 12 warships, even against an army. Yes, Voss considered this. For a long moment, he just looked at the human, trying to understand. What are you? He asked. Finally, Marcus thought about the question. He thought about Elena and the life they had built. He thought about Lily and the future she would have. He thought about everything he had done to get here and everything he would do to protect the people he loved. I'm her father, he said. Then he turned and walked away. Voss watched him go and whispered, humans. 3 months later, Europa Station had been rebuilt. The colony was recovering, and people were starting to smile again. The children were back in school, and the markets were open, and life went on as life always does. Marcus sat on the balcony of his new home, watching the stars. Lily was beside him, wrapped in a blanket, drinking hot chocolate. Dad, she said after a long silence. Yes, sweetheart. The aliens who took me, they thought humans were weak. Marcus nodded. A lot of species do. Why? He considered the question carefully. Because we do not have claws or fangs. We cannot breathe poison or survive in a vacuum. We are small and soft, and we do not live very long. On paper, we are nothing special. But we are special. Right? Marcus put his arm around her and pulled her close. We are, he pointed at the stars. Look at all those worlds out there. Our species that have been traveling the galaxy for thousands of years. They have technology we cannot even imagine. They have empires that span hundreds of star systems. He looked down at her. But when they took you, when they thought no one would come after them, when they believed you were helpless and alone, he smiled. One human crossed the galaxy and tore apart everything in his way. Because you are my daughter, and that is what humans do. We protect what we love. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, what if they come back? What if the Valari or someone else tries again? Then I will be there. What? If you are not? What if something happens to you? Marcus turned to face her, and his eyes were serious. Listen to me, Lily. The galaxy is full of species that think they are the apex predators. They look at humans, and they see prey. They see weakness. He touched her face gently. But we are not weak. We endure, we adapt. We survive things that should destroy us. And when someone hurts the people we love, we do not stop, we do not surrender, we do not give up. He paused. Ever Lily nodded, slowly understanding. Across the galaxy, in the dark places where slavers and criminals gathered, a new understanding had taken hold. The Lari Syndicate avoided human ships now. They changed their routes to stay far from human colonies. They told stories about the devil who had come for his daughter and destroyed everything in his path. Other species heard those stories. Some laughed and dismissed them as exaggeration. But those who had seen the aftermath, those who had talked to the survivors, they knew the truth. Humans were not what they seemed. They were soft and slow and fragile. But beneath that softness was something ancient and terrible, a survival instinct forged through millions of years of evolution, a capacity for violence that could burn worlds, a love for their families that transcended all reason. In the Galactic Index, humans were still classified as a minor species, physically unremarkable, technologically developing, limited in their expansion. But now there was a footnote, a warning passed down through generations of spacefaring species, a lesson written in the wreckage of 12 warships and the screams of 200 soldiers. Never take what a human loves, because they do not just survive. They come looking, and when they find you, God help you. Stars glittered above Europa, station cold and infinite and full of mystery. Marcus and Lily sat in silence, watching them together. Somewhere out there, other species were going about their lives, building empires, conquering worlds, thinking they were the masters of the universe. They did not know about Marcus Parker. They did not know about the father who had crossed the galaxy for his daughter. They did not know about the human capacity for love and fury and unstoppable determination. But they would learn. They always learn at the end.